For this week's big interview, I sat down with Barry O'Reilly, author of Lean Enterprise, Unlearn and a brand new book, Artificial Organizations. We covered three things. Number one, why starting with AI tools is the biggest mistake leaders are making right now. We speak about a CEO who built a bot to replace his entire leadership team as a sounding board. Is he a genius or is this terrifying? And finally, we discuss why AI doesn't replace leadership, it instead exposes it. Enjoy this week's interview. Right, we have to get straight into this, Barry, because what is the core idea? I think our listeners want to know, what do you mean? How do you combine human instinct with machine insight? And specifically, practically, how does that work?
Yeah, well, I think we're probably getting to the hype cycle maximum for AI at the moment, where people are just excited about another tool, another feature release. But what that actually is causing is more overwhelmness in the industry. Leaders feel like they're behind. They don't know what tools to start with. They're struggling. And at the same time, they've more information than they've ever had. They've more dashboards than they ever had. And yet decisions feel slower. Choices are harder. They feel more high stakes. So people are like really struggling out there. And for me, I felt like the message about how to use these tools was actually, the wrong message that people were hearing. I've been working and coaching executives from Fortune 500s now for the last number of years. I have a venture studio that focuses on early stage AI companies called Nobody Studios. And also myself learning how to essentially augment the best of my skills with these tools to get me higher performance. And the sort of aha for me was that it wasn't the machines that are going to kill us and a bad version of the Matrix. I couldn't just rely on my human instincts to see me through like they may have in the past. The real power is actually combining the best of me, my natural human skills, traits to specifically, with the power of this machine intelligence to drive better outcomes. And that's really what the premise of this book is about. It's not about tools. It's not about AI hype. It's actually about judgment and how people make better decisions because they can be more informed, more prepared, and actually more present when they show up in meetings by using these tools to help them to get in the optimal position to make, high stakes decisions.
Barry, were you your own petri dish? Did you use these tools in your daily life, in your workflows, and then you've essentially extrapolated the lessons for others?
Yeah, well, I think anyone who knows me is I love a good experiment, and like even with the book Unlearn that you mentioned, like I'm dyslexic. So if I had told my English literature teacher that actually written three books, they wouldn't believe you. But the way I sort of wrote Unlearn was kind of interesting. I thought the natural trait of writers is that they type, they grind, they sit at the desks, they turn out these pages late at night. And I tried to do all these things, but it wasn't working for me. So I was struggling and I was thought, well, I'd written Lean Enterprise with Jez and Joanne. That was a team. So I was like, maybe I can't do this on my own. But then I had this sort of unlearning moment, if you will. I realized that I wasn't trying to just type, I was trying to create content. And actually, most of my best ideas, most of my flow state is actually talking. It's not typing. So what I ended up doing is I ended up hiring a journalist and I would bullet point out the chapters for Unlearn. And we would jump on a call just like you and I are now, and we'd use this very early AI transcription service. So we would just talk to each other about the book. The transcription would be running. And then at the end of the call, the writer would sort of copy edit the sort of first raw version of that conversation and send it back to me almost like a minimum viable chapter. So instantly, I could go from like a blank page to sort of iterating a first version of a chapter in literally a couple of minutes. So I got past this sort of challenge of a blank page really, and I got into flow using my natural traits for the task of creating content, and then finding the right tools that would support me. And that was sort of the big aha moment for me, where I was just like, hang on a sec, there's a better
Yeah.
way for me to work that augments my natural traits. And that was
So
really the beginning of
it
this journey.
So it has enhanced you, Barry, rather than replaced or supplemented something that was missing inside of you.
Yeah, so the way I talk about it in the book is this 3T model. I talk about your natural traits, recognizing your natural strengths, and how do you, if you will, augment them. And then what are the tasks that have the highest leverage for what you do? And is there, again, what are they? So you know what they are. And then once you know your natural traits and the tasks that matter, then you can select the tools that actually fit the job. The biggest problem with this industry right now is everyone is jumping straight to tools and they're playing around with these sort of tools, but they're
Yeah.
not the right tools for the job. They're not the right tools for them personally. So they sort of play with them, waste all this time, get stuck and go, oh no, AI is not for me, or the tools aren't developed enough yet, or they go back to the safety of staying in sort of stasis, if you will. And again, that's probably one of the biggest moments to unlearn, I would say, in this time is the biggest mistake is starting with tools. You should start with your natural traits.
Exactly, but you say that that is the present problem in our industry, but I'm sorry to tell you that has been the problem since the very beginning of our industry, this overfocus on tools, in my opinion. You've triggered a memory, Barry. So I was reading up when I put together my last book, Visionaries and Rebels, and the big question was why couldn't companies succeed with AWS like AWS did? And I was triggered by Gary Kasparov. You remember him, the chess player?
Yeah, yeah,
And
amazing.
so eventually he was beaten by IBM's Deep Blue. He fell into a deep depression. Oh my God, what have I done with my life? But then he realized something. He entered a chess competition, and the winners were not the best chess players, and they didn't have the best supercomputer. But the process by which those players interacted with their bunch of basically desktops led them to be the best hybrid team. And Kasparov had exactly the same aha moment as you. He's like, yes, this is not about me versus the machine. This is about me teaming up with the machine. And ever since then, Gary Kasparov has been writing and talking enthusiastically about the potential of computers working, I guess, in synergy or symbiosis with a human being.
Yeah, no, it is amazing, right? And like there's some amazing research starting to materialize as too as well. Harvard recently did a report with Procter and Gamble teams. They took basically 700 odd teams, and they tried to pair innovation teams on their own, trying to come up with ideas. Then they paired individuals with AI, trying to come up with ideas, and then teams working with AI to come up with ideas. And Teams plus AI was triple the performance of everybody else. So this idea of recognizing that it's an augmentation to the natural abilities, and you know how I use it very simply. You know, one of the examples in the book is a CEO bot that we built, which was a bot to help people prepare for high stakes meetings. So the idea isn't, you know, you don't show up on game day like ready to go. You've practiced, you've coached, you've battle tested yourself and your ideas. So this little bot, you can basically say, here's the leader I'm dealing with, here's some of their natural tendencies. This is the information I want to present. Challenge it. Ask me counterintuitive questions. Ask me different perspectives. Pressure test my thinking. So when people then go in to speak to the CEO, they're on it. They're prepared. They're actually calm and they're very present. And this is sort of the power of when you start to use these tools to help augment your natural skills and abilities, not replacing, it's making you better. It's the ultimate training partner, the ultimate thinking partner. These are the powers I think that you're seeing the execs who are just powering ahead versus those that are sort of stuck on this sort of linear growth curve. They're up against people who are on exponential growth curves. And that's just, where the industry is going.
So you've teed me up very nicely there, Barry, because I think what I want to know and what all of our viewers want to know is what problems do leaders face right now? You mentioned it in the book and you mentioned it at the top of this podcast. There's too much data, decisions should be better and should be quicker, and yet they are slower. So what challenges do leaders face right now, and how does working with AI help them overcome those challenges?
Well, I think, from one of the things that became very obvious to me was a little bit of fear, actually. One of the things we did as part of the book is last summer, I sent an email out to all the execs on my mailing list. There's about 5,000 of them, and pretty much they all responded. And I asked them things like, what level they're at in the company, how sort of comfortable or how would they grade their expertise in AI. Basically, 62% were like, we're beginners. And how they were using it was sort of, again, a lot of them were using it for just emailing or reviewing docs or maybe plain experimenting sort of late at night, right? Like but the real sort of finding a way to make it really powerful and leverage for them was a huge challenge. Like they didn't really know what to do and they didn't know where to start. But the most interesting thing was when I asked them how they wanted to learn, they all said in small or individual groups. And this to me was kind of odd. I was like, well, why? And they're like, well, I feel like I need to know this stuff already. I feel like I can't sort of say I don't know or look awkward, right? So it's lonely at the top, but it's even
Yeah.
worse feeling inconfident at the top, right? Again, very human thing to be. And, a lot of people, I think, feel like this. It's not just CEOs. So that was sort of one of these first like real human insights, if you will, for what was happening. And then the other side of that is, when you are the CEO, it's very actually hard to find sounding boards for ideas. You can't, and this, Jamie, you've built and run companies. Sometimes you come up to one of your team members and you're like, hey, I just want to bounce an idea off you. I'm thinking about we should open an office in, and instead of North America, we should go to South America. Well, maybe there's a different talent pool there. Now, you might just be wanting to bounce an idea and sort of pressure test it and see what's happening. But what happens often is the other person starts extrapolating. They can't help it. They're like, hang on a sec, are we closing down the North American office? Are we all moving to South America? What's going to happen to me? All these sort of biases start falling into the equation where basically the CEOs just want someone to test their ideas with and sort of make them better. Right. So again, another real powerful part of this is creating a safe space for people to experiment with half-formed, half-baked ideas. Like test different strategies, look at different options. What if we change this? What if I tweak that? What does that
Yeah.
model look like? And that is a place that is very rare for people in senior leadership roles. I can see you nodding because I know you've been there, right? You've built companies, you've been the
Yeah.
CEO, so these are the kind of things that I think are very special that these tools are starting to offer people, because then they can show up, right, in well prepared, well thought out, or they can say, actually, you know what, that idea, it was half baked because it's not good enough. I'm just going to park it now, and I'm not even going to annoy the team about it. I'm going to move on to the next best idea we have, and that is a powerful sort of behavior to be happening.
Working with about 5 or 6 chief execs or their teams at any given moment. And often, whenever there's a problem with a CEO, it's because they do not have people around them, whether it's non execs, their friends, or a partner to bounce ideas off. There are certain things that you cannot share with members of your organization because they're either not ready,
Yep.
they will panic, they will extrapolate, like you said. And there's a reason that somebody's a chief executive, probably because they're more experienced in a certain thing. And I'm, people come to us and say, "Oh, can container solutions help us?" I'm like, well, the first thing you need to do is to hold the mirror up to yourself. You need to get feedback. Sometimes I provide that, but if a computer program can provide it, I would say fill your boots.
Yeah, no, and it's fun for them, right? Because
Right.
again, the,
Yeah.
the other part of this is the only way you can really understand the capabilities is you have to use this stuff. Like you cannot read it about it in a book. You're not going to read artificial organizations and suddenly be an AI expert. You actually have to start playing around with it, understand the boundaries, what it's good at, what it's bad at. But it's very tactile, this sort of technology experience. And again, that is part of the process of you understanding it personally so you can help and guide others. One of the case studies in the book is with Andrew Phillips, who's the CTO at Skyscanner. Now, I met Andrew when Skyscanner were like a team of 30. I worked with them for 9 months up in Edinburgh. Andrew was actually like a grad, he was a hire at the time. And seriously, everybody was like, that guy's going to be the CTO one day. It's hilarious. And here he is, for 15 odd years later. But again, one of the things that was great about him sharing his story in the book is this idea of he tried to experiment in the open. He tried to talk to his team to say, look, I don't know how these tools work. I'm going to play around with them over here. he's surrounded by data scientists, people that are managing terabytes of data every day. He's not the expert in this, but he put himself in a place to learn, and share what he learned with people. And I think these are sort of like the examples I think that we need to see more and more, both technical and non-technical leaders be okay with. Nobody knows all this stuff. You're not behind. You're not necessarily ahead. You're where you are, right? And you
Yeah.
that's where you build from.
But unfortunately, as a leader, it's hard to show weakness. If you've built an environment where you can, it's okay to fail, good for you, well done. But it's human nature to take advantage of if somebody says, I'm going to do X and then they fail, it's human nature for people to pile in. We're all capable of doing that. And I think that's the challenge at the very top of organizations.
Right on.
Barry, I want to switch gears now because I want to talk about the cephalopod problem. And that might require me to explain that ever so slightly. So Simon
Yeah,
Wardley,
please.
I can't remember. I can't remember when Simon said this. It was maybe a year ago, and people were saying, "Oh, how what would AI is going to replace all these jobs? Bus drivers, lorry drivers, computer programmers." And I think Simon, and I'm not sure if his tongue was in cheek, said, "Oh, we should use them to replace chief executives." And I think that was his way of saying, no matter how bad the AI is, there are chief executives out there who are indecisive, lacking in courage. Now, this led me to what I started calling the cephalopod problem, which is that you've got a lot of. I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. You've got a lot of leaders out there who are very intelligent, but they're lacking a backbone. And once I sort of had a name for the cephalopod problem, I saw it everywhere. Teams who know exactly what they have to do, whether it's in restructuring, retraining, shifting position because they've made a market observation. The chief executive knows what has to happen. They wait 12 months, 24 months, and then when events dictate what everybody knew had to happen 2 years ago, they finally do it. It's not a lack of intelligence or information, it's a lack of spine. And I'm kind of curious, where does artificial organizations and your thinking fit into that idea?
Yeah, like this is sort of an age-old problem, right? But one of the things I say in the book is that AI doesn't replace leadership; it exposes it. And this is sort of, I guess, what you're sort of prodding at, and and it's a fair one to call out, right? Like it also goes back to this idea of what has helped many people rise to the top is their tenure, their time, experience, and also their instinct, right? And they sort of rely on all those human sort of natural traits. Maybe they've great recall. Maybe they are, they've just been in the industry for 27 years and they know it inside out. Whatever these sort of very human sort of skills are. But now you're sort of coming up against people who mightn't have those skills, but they're really good at learning fast. They know where to get the information. They know how to source and synthesize what's actually happening both inside the company and outside the company. So the way they're making decisions is from both an instinct and skills and experience, but they're augmenting or they're combining that with all these data insights about how the business is operating, about where the market is going, how customers are behaving, because they've built this sort of judgment infrastructure in their businesses. And this harks back to even, I think you were talking about Amazon and AWS. Like what Amazon did is they built a judgment system, a platform that allowed them to learn faster how people interacted with their products so they could adapt them quicker than anybody else. When they were doing these deployments every 7 seconds, that was just a learning cycle, right? They were trying something, seeing what worked, roll it back or double down and do the next experiment. So their learning velocity is just at a whole different level. Or as I talk about in the book, it's decision velocity and decision advantage. So decision velocity, how frequently are we making decisions and moving forward? And decision advantage, how much information do we have to support that decision with confidence? And when you build these judgment infrastructures and have systems to make choices like that, you just power ahead. So you cannot rely just on human instinct anymore and alone and tender. You've got to pair it and combine it with this human instinct and machine intelligence, or just human and machine intelligence. Like that's what we have to aim for. So look, the CEO will always have to make calls when it's difficult. Judgment and decision should always be a human role, not a machine. You defer judgment, you've basically handed over the keys to the castle with unknown outcomes. So this is sort of where we're at now, I think. And, the great leaders, as ever, are the ones who will recognize when they need to step in and make a decision and when they have to defer down to the teams to make decisions. And a
Yeah.
very simple metric on that is if you're the CEO and you're making every single decision, that tells you that there's no agency in the system, that people aren't empowered or you don't think they're informed to make decisions. And I think there's Reed Hastings was the Netflix CEO. One of his famous quotes is, "I measure success by the least amount of decisions I have to make each quarter because the teams are making the decisions." And I think that's just something to hold in our heads at this moment.
We spoke about that when I came on your podcast. If you're making all the decisions, if you built a good team, the chief executive should be making the most awful decisions. Those are the ones that the team can't make. If you've got a
I remember
widespread
that.
of decisions, some of them easy, some of them hard, you've not built a leadership team.
Yeah, no, that was a great point you made on the show, and it's true. And it really is, like it should be the job of the CEO to deal with the horrible decisions that just no one else should or can make. And that's part of the role of the leadership. But if you're
So
deciding, what Sharpies have to be ordered this week and how many post-it notes, well, that's probably not the right place where you want to be.
you spoke earlier today, Barry, about your process of writing and how AI and different tools have helped you expand your own workflow, not change it or replace it. What I've noticed at Container Solutions and with our customers is that it is exactly what you say. These AI tools amplify things that are going on. So when Google Docs first arrived, I became more effective as a writer because part of my process was to seek feedback and get comments. And once you had Google Docs, that was way easier.
Yeah, nice.
Another part of that process is that I've got certain phrases I use. I call it showing up and throwing up. So when I'm writing, I show up and I just there throw up onto my keyboard. But then I look for words like was, to be, had, and I just change them. I've got like a list, and every year the list gets bigger, and I go through my list very diligently. Well, actually, Claude can use my process really quickly now. It's my
Absolutely.
process. It's all
Yep.
me. I came up with that. Nobody can take that away
Yep.
from me. But because I'm an experienced writer, Claude makes me go faster. But the flip of that is that people who are shit at their jobs all of a sudden appear to be even shitter because they are failing where their colleagues are succeeding. This is a huge problem for our customers right now. It's like, oh my God, there are 10 people who do all the work in this organization. I'm like, da-da. And that is a headache for them. And that's what, LLMs have shown them.
Yeah, like again, it goes back to that point of AI doesn't replace leadership, it exposes it, right? And you start to see this ability when you can help people who have these natural traits and they understand their tasks. If you give them the tools to amplify, augment, to accelerate their work, their work goes exponential. Like it's frightening actually, to a point where sometimes I have to almost say to those people, the job is not just executing a million tasks. Thinking is also a task. So, put in some thinking time before you make these decisions. Just don't be in such a execution mode that you're just like 7,000 decisions made today, like
Yeah.
we still need to think. But what the automation does is gives us time to think. But to
Mm.
your other point then, where people are struggling or they're lackluster or they're not able to show up, right? There is fundamental scariness about actually thinking about how they're working. They mightn't do it. They're probably disengaged. They're probably unhappy. There's a lot of challenges about folks when you say, right, and now I'm just going to sprinkle a bit of AI over the whole company, and then we're going to find out the high performers and the low performers. So I do think there's a process of helping people recognize you have to recognize your natural traits and strengths and you want to amplify them. And you said that yourself a moment ago, and that's hard for people because at the moment the message in the market is just try this tool. Oh, I was using Claude Open Claude last week, and now I'm 7,000 times more productive. Or I just downloaded Cowork, and now I'm making $100,000 a week while I sit at home and drink coffees. Like that. That's the market FOMO that's going on, and it's not real, And I think my favorite, I guess, meme of the week was someone posted this image of like the world's population at like 8 billion sort of people. And then there was like these cubes were like 3.2 million people per cube. And then, you had this huge blank space and then this one cube in the corner that's like, this are the amount of people that are actually using AI, like 3.2 million people, like
Yeah.
that's it versus 8 billion.
And,
And I think it's a
and if
reminder, where
and
we
if
are
and if
really.
and if you zoom in again and again and again and again, you'd find me and you right in the bottom corner.
That's it.
So,
That's it.
so it's funny, right? Jason Gorman is talking a lot about code. Code is not the bottleneck, right? It never was the bottleneck. So if you can speed up coding, fantastic, but you're not going to speed up all the infrastructure issues. So if you go back to my example about using, I've sort of automated my process for looking for certain sentences. So
Yeah.
I never used Claude when I wrote Visionaries, Rebels, and Machines. That
Yeah.
book,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never admitted this in public. I think I was chipping away at it for about 5 years. So that
Yeah.
process whereby I look at for those words, it takes me about a week a chapter. There was 20 chapters. Uh, Even once I've found the words, I've then got to replace them. That's the creative bit. It's like I found it now. What am I going to say? And the way I do it is I reach to my bookshelf and I pick any Pulitzer Prize winning book and I start reading. And when that author gets into my head, I then put it down. Claude cannot make that go quicker. So
No.
instead of it taking me 5 days, it might have taken me 4 years and 360 days. So that part of the process is hugely optimized, but in the bigger process, it's fuck all. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
saying I don't want to do it. I'm happy for it, but you've got to understand that we work in systems and these things are all interconnected.
Yeah, no, it's so true, and like you said, even when I opened up the idea of doing artificial organizations, I didn't start with a blank page, right? One of the things I started doing in about 2016 was I had a meeting co-pilot with me in every single meeting I ever ran. So I started capturing every piece of information that I was creating as an asset that I could leverage later. So for me, when I decided, you know what, I'm going to try and write this book, it was hundreds and hundreds of hours of conversations that I had with senior leaders, with founders of startups, with myself even, all this data pool that I had created. And really, most of the creative act was learning it by doing it, having these conversations with people over time, role modeling the systems myself, like this capture, transcribe, synthesize, and then act. This was one of my loops that I did for everything. Like capture the meetings as data, transcribe it into a form I could understand, synthesize it using an LLM, and then take action. This was like the core of everything I did. And really, as I was doing it, I started to learn the systems for myself and then coach them to others and understand how to communicate them. And so, really, the book was actually only 6 weeks' work. I literally was down in Australia for the holidays. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to do the experiment. I'm going to see, can I take all of this data? I had a structure from coaching execs for the last 6 months of what the book outline would be. And I said, let's see if I can do it. And over those 3 weeks, I created the first crappy draft. And I literally was like, this crappy draft is actually a little bit less crappy than the usual crappy drafts I produce,
Yeah, yeah,
because it was
yeah,
informed. And
yeah.
that's what got me going on this. And here we are, and we'll be live in March, which again, for me, is again, speed that I never, like Unlearn at best took me 2 years to write. Lean Enterprise was 4. This thing
Mm.
is going to be live in a matter of months, and the production process is actually the longest part of it. Would you believe? Which is insane.
Well, if production's the bottleneck, then you're winning. Okay, Barry, we are coming to the end now. My final question is around the future of leadership. We've spoken about unlearning previous lessons and unrolling old habits. If you could speak directly to the camera and give just one piece of advice to leaders and managers navigating AI in the next few years, what would that advice be?
Well, I think we've both said this in our own way on this sort of podcast, is that again, you're not behind, you're not ahead. It's just you are where you are right now. And the only way forward with this technology is using it. You cannot read a book and become an expert in it. You have to use it. It's a tactile technology. But what's also amazing about it is It's the only technology, certainly I ever remember, where if I'm stuck, I can ask it for help and it will give me good advice about how to get to the next step, which again is amazing. Where I can be like, now you write probably more code than I ever do, but this idea of like, even when I'm writing blogs, I can challenge myself and say, be brutal, be like a Fortune 500 exec and read this article and tell me where where it's fragile. And that just makes stuff better. So for me, that's what I'm most excited about.
Wonderful. On that happy note, Barry, best of luck with the book launch in March. I will share that on our newsletter and all of that. I can't read to put it into the hands of my customers. So as soon as I've got a physical copy, it is getting distributed. Thank you so much, and we'll speak to you next time.
Thanks very much, Jamie, as ever.
Thanks for watching Container Solutions TV. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe on YouTube and follow Container Solutions on LinkedIn for cut down parts and weekly clips. If you want help with platform engineering, cloud native transformation, or you need to follow the money in order to change how you operate your cloud at scale, then visit our website using the links below and get in touch. We'll see you in the next episode.